Good morning, and welcome to the Starlight Sprint 5 review. Super excited. We actually have quite a lot of updates to share with you all today. So generally, the goal of Sprint 5 was to begin some initial testing in the staging environments at both campuses, and then work on any bug fixes that are related to that testing work. Also to focus a lot on theming, including the ability to apply a global theme, and also still, unfortunately, working to get shibboleth configured for UCSB. Generally, like all of the sprints during the 60 to 90 work cycle, we've been working towards the milestone of having an initial instance of the Spotlight platform in production at both campuses. So to quickly go through what those accomplishments were, and I'll be demoing some of these after sort of the summary. But we do now have an initial version of the UCSD theme deployed to the staging site, which is super exciting. We also made a number of revisions to the initial UCSB theme. And Alex did the work to develop an approach for global theming. So she wrote the code, but that is currently blocked by an upstream pull request. So I'll talk a little bit about that. But until that's resolved, themes are limited in power. And so, for example, until we get that pull request merged, it's blocking the work that we'll need to do to allow themes to support sort of the requested footers with lots of links and information in them. Right now, we're sort of limited with what we can put in certain areas of the site because of that. On the deployment side, UCSD did successfully deploy to their staging environment using shibboleth, which is super exciting. Also, the work to set up mounts for the isilon shares to support batch ingest of content directly from the UCSD file shares has been implemented. The testing for that, though, is still in progress. We also added initial health check endpoints for the application, and this is really scaffolding work since this will be needed when we eventually deploy Starlight in a Kubernetes environment. And also some collaboration with the Lark team happened during this sprint to get a Helm chart for Solar deployed via the Lark Helm chart. So this is work that Starlight will benefit from also when it transitions towards that Kubernetes Helm-based deployment. The other thing that we had a lot of accomplishments during this sprint was testing. So the product owners for both campuses, so myself and Jessica, spent quite a lot of time testing the initial deployments on each campus infrastructure, and we're able to identify a number of bugs. And what is a little bit complex in the collaboration is that we have to figure out if the bugs are unique to our local environments, if they are replicated in both local environments, then if it's something that's unique to our code base, or if it's an upstream issue. And so one of the things we're just starting to talk about is really the best way to approach testing on both campuses. Once we have campus-based shibboleth implemented, we're also limited by the testing we can do on each other's implementations, because I don't have a login for UCSD shibboleth and vice versa. Jessica won't here. And so we're already starting to talk about the best way to approach testing in the future on both campuses. Right now, we have dual checklists that we're following to sort of manage that. But we've already talked about maybe we should be looking towards system-wide shibboleth so that we could actually give each other permission in the long term, but in the short term also exploring things like just getting a Surfliner shibboleth login and seeing if that's, so we've already sort of started talking through those things, which I think will be really helpful not just for Starlight, but for the future products, for us to have worked through some of those issues related to actually figuring out what's going on in the individual systems. But as part of that testing, we did identify a number of bugs and got some of those resolved during this sprint. And that includes an issue where the feedback menu item and drop-down contact form wasn't showing in the header. And this is connected to the Spotlight feature that allows exhibit curators to specify a contact email per exhibit, which is actually quite nice. So there's one sort of globally for the site, but then you can choose to override that with a specific email address. Say if you have a exhibit from special collections versus an exhibit that's done by your music department, you can have that feedback go to that specific department for that exhibit, which is pretty cool. So that is now showing up. We also identified that there were several either irrelevant or non-functional features having to do with the citation function, SMS this, safe searches, and those sort of come from just Blacklight in general. But within Spotlight, some of them weren't working correctly, or they weren't really relevant for the exhibit content the way that they would be, say, in a repository context. And so we did go ahead and disable those that were either not working as expected or weren't really relevant. Some of those are connected to upstream bugs within the Spotlight code base. And so we will be reporting those to the community to hopefully get some resolution there, and perhaps maybe one day bring them back into the site. But for now, we removed all that non-functional stuff. There also was an issue uploading individual items at UCSD, which was related to your prior Spotlight installation. So that has been resolved. And I can show you there's actually items in the UCSD installation, which is very cool. Finally, or not finally, there's more. We did a lot this time. So Ansible, we converted the roles in the playbooks to support Tower compatible Ansible version, reorganized the passenger gems for, I can never pronounce this word correctly. Somebody help me. Idempotency, did I get it right?
Idempotency, very close.
Yeah. Thank you. This is one of those words that I've only seen written, not pronounced. Ensure all required characters are properly percent encoded for database passwords, and enabled shibboleth pass in Apache's configuration. And then a few miscellaneous updates to, we updated Ruby to the latest version, 2.6.2, and replaced the Chrome driver helper dependency with a new WebDrivers alternative. So we actually set out most of what we wanted to accomplish in this sprint. However, you'll see on the board that there are a notable number of blocked tickets. This whole open column is filled with blocked tickets. And we also have one within the in progress that should shortly be resolved. Some of these are just related to bugs that we discovered during testing and are still sort of working out, getting those unblocked, and by other there's interdependent bugs, so we can't fix one until we fix the other. But there's also several that are related to external circumstances, as I think Matt phrased very eloquently yesterday. And really these external circumstances have been major blockers for the team. And this includes a failure to merge upstream pull requests within that larger Spotlight community code base. So we've written the code for this, and we've requested that it be added to the Spotlight sort of shared community code base. And we're just waiting for the developers on that team to review it and merge those in. Those developers, though, are busy on another project. So that's causing a delay for our team, because we really want to be using where we can community provided code as opposed to forking too much. We also continue to just have had some delays on the UCSB side for our shibboleth implementation. That is taking a lot longer than I think anyone anticipated. But we still, talking about it yesterday, Matt and I are still feeling very confident that by the end of next sprint, we should hopefully be able to give all the stakeholders access to respective installations on both campuses, whether that's staging or production. I think that depends on the particular campus situation, but we do hope by 2 weeks from today that you'll all have access to the site and can start working in it and doing training and learning how to use it, and also helping find any other bugs or any other tweaks that the team needs to do. So is there anything that I missed, Matt, that you think should be talked about?
Nope, it's great.
Okay, so are there any questions before I move on to the demo piece? Awesome. So the first thing I'm actually going to show you, look, it's a UCSD cocktails around the world site. I'm going to briefly stop sharing my screen because, as I mentioned, I am not able to demo logging into this as I don't have a UCSD Shibboleth account. So Matt is actually going to take over quickly and just demo that piece and then hand the control back to me. So I'm going to stop sharing now.
So can everybody see my version of cocktails around the world?
I see your Zoom login screen on there.
Oh, okay. Better? All right. Okay, so this will be the world's shortest demo, but it's a happy demo. So if I click sign in, those of you on the UCSD side should be familiar with this screen. And so you can log in as yourself, and I may get sent. Oh, good. And you will come back in, and if you have not authenticated before, it's going to create an account for you automatically. And you won't have any particular access that you wouldn't as an anonymous user right away, but this allows for administrators, of course, to then add you as, say, an exhibit administrator. And so yeah, this is a really exciting milestone to finally have this working. And hopefully, as Chrissy said, this will be the case for Santa Barbara very soon. And yeah, I think Chrissy, you're going to do a little bit more of the demo, but we just want to make sure to show that as this is done, you'll be able to use it soon.
That little green box is super exciting.
It is nice.
So do you want to stop sharing, Matt, and I will?
Yes, I will do that.
All right, so you should all see my version of the UCSD site now. Related to Shibboleth, we're still working on testing that at UCSD. We have to, I guess, clear out an old database in order to do that. That work is in progress, and then hopefully we'll be able to close this out completely from the UCSD side. I'm actually going to switch over now to the Santa Barbara installation. One of the things that's actually quite cool about the way we've done theming, and I'm going to go into this exhibit here, is that because it is a theme, I can actually turn on the UCSD theme. So I've done this, although ignore the fact that this is the remarkable antecedent of UC Santa Barbara. Pretend that says San Diego. But I did want to just talk about a few things. You can see, actually, before I do that, you can see from this homepage, we still haven't been able to, as I mentioned, implement global theming yet. And so that's why you're still seeing this black light up above, and not, even though I've themed these other exhibits, that's not carrying through to the homepage. And so that's connected to the work we're doing related to global theming. The other thing is, I know UCSB, we have a sort of a beefier footer that we want to put in with some of our campus branding. And we're not able to do that until after. It's sort of a two-step process. First, we need to implement global theming, and then we need to give those themes more power. And so that will be phased, and that adding in that more robust footer may actually be work that needs to happen after we give stakeholder access. But our goal is to have at least an initial good first pass at the themes before we turn it over to you all. And part of that's just that we are we are not in control of the timeline because it does involve that external dependencies. But now if I go into this site that's now themed for UCSD, the thing that's really important to note sort of about this process is that we really aren't, until something is deployed, we're really not able to test it. And so this should be quite familiar in terms of the menus and the colors and the logos for the San Diego folks. You will notice, though, we are starting to send feedback along to David with all of the good work he's done. You'll notice that this still has the blacklight header, and the UC San Diego branding is actually in this masthead area. And sort of the problem with that, and I'm actually going to show you when I go to the exhibit dashboard, if I go ahead and click the show background image in masthead, and then select an image that I want back there and add it, save this, it actually wipes out your theming, except for down here at the footer. And so what we're working on doing is we've already added some information here to go ahead and move that theming up into the header. So to blow out the black light and have your San Diego theming persist at the top here. And that's similar to what you see down here in the San Diego one, or in the Santa Barbara one. So that's in progress. And Jessica is continuing to just go through and try to pull out sort of any initial issues that she's seeing with the theme, and sort of getting a good solid first pass, like I said, before we turn it over to stakeholders. Some of the work that was also done in this sprint was revisions to the UCSB theme. There have been a number of issues that were sort of identified also when we initially implemented what we were given from campus. I'm gonna just pull this other ticket over here too. So you can see that when it was initially deployed, there's text on these that you can't really read. There wasn't enough spacing between the boxes. We didn't have spacing between our paragraphs, and we didn't, the padding here just wasn't appropriate. And so that is work that Alex was able to fix in the UCSB theme as part of this last sprint. I'll go to the home page, and you can see now that there's spaces there. We do still have some other issues that have been identified in terms of some padding and some, title case, and not having the appropriate header. And so those things have been identified already, and tickets have been created for some of those. So this is that eyebrow header that we need to implement. These right now on the UCSB front are being blocked by that upstream work. So it is an iterative process. And once that global theming PR is closed, we'll be able to make additional progress on both campuses theming. The other thing I just want to show quickly is some of those bugs that we discovered, and then just showing the resolution to those. So this was that feedback link in the header that I mentioned being missing from the sites. It just didn't show up, and we didn't get this contact form. But you can see now if I go to the UCSD site, I now get this nice drop-down menu I'm able to fill out and would go to that person or department that was designated as the contact. And the same thing also is now appearing on the UCSB site. So that's great. The other thing we identified, like I mentioned during testing, was a number of issues with the tools and the header, the tools box and the header. And I can talk through these a little bit more. We asked that both the safe searches and the history be removed. And this was actually when we were doing testing on this, these are those upstream bugs. The routing isn't appropriate. So if you did a save search and then you went back and attempted to run that save search, where they've routed you in the application is actually outside of the specific exhibit. And so when you try to run that search, it was coming up as not finding any items. So these are those sort of upstream bugs that were really problematic. The other thing that we did remove is the citation function. And I know that, and I will talk through a little bit about why we removed it for the time being, is that it's actually quite complex when you have an application where you allow custom metadata fields to then have a citation field, because it would be quite a lot of work for us we would need to provide a tool to allow you to map those custom metadata fields into a citation format and support all of the various citation formats. And so we made the decision, at least initially, because it would not work the way I think folks would want it to work, to remove that. And that's something that I think would be a really great, if it's something that stakeholders do really desire as a feature, I think we'd need to talk more about what the requirements for that would be and figure out actually the amount of work it would take to implement it in a satisfactory way. It's just, I know it's been quite complex even within a digital, like a DAMS context, where your metadata fields aren't able to be added per exhibit the way these are, where it's just the same metadata profile. And so this just seemed that it was going to be very complex for perhaps something that wasn't necessarily needed in an exhibit platform. And then the other thing that we did disable was the SMS this, so that the text message. That again is something that if it's something that stakeholders would like to see turned on, we can certainly capture the amount of work that it would take to get that turned on it and talk more about the requirement for that. We did leave on the emails and the bookmarks, and those are working correctly. So I can just show you really quick. Oh, and I realized you're not actually seeing my ticket. There we go. So these were the things I was talking about. So up in the header, safe searches and history, removing the site from the bookmark screen, and then removing some things from the toolbars. So I can show you that really quickly. Up at the top, you'll just see bookmarks. If I do a search and go to an item within the San Diego site, I can bookmark this item, I can email this item, and if I go to my bookmarks, I have this email option and can email it as well. And then from the Santa Barbara side, same thing. If I go to an item, I can bookmark it. I get this email form. This is still the email. Santa Barbara has been having email issues, so that's something that we're working on resolving. We have an issue with our SMPT server, is that correct? So we're working to resolve it, but you are able to still get this option and go to your bookmarks and email it there. So, and you'll see that those other options have been removed for the time being. And then just finally, we did have an issue, like I said, where there was a failure uploading items in Starlight at UCSD. So Jessica was able to go through and actually enter the item and attach an image, but it gave this message that it was uploaded successfully, but no entries were found. But that was successfully resolved. I think Matt had said that, like I mentioned before, this was an issue related to your prior installation of Spotlight. So once that was cleared out, all of the things that she had queued up were able to go in. And so I can just show you here is an image of a delicious rum cocktail. And you can see the zooming and the rotation and the download are there. So that's images. She also did upload a PDF to confirm that that was working on the San Diego side. So here's a 12-page cabin camper PDF. You can scroll through all of those pages and also do the zoom in, zoom all the fit to width, and the download, print, and rotate options as well. So that's all working as expected now on the San Diego side. So that is it for me in terms of the demo portion. Are there any questions from folks before we wrap up today?
Wow, no questions in Lark and no questions in Starlight. It's astonishing. You're muted.
Thank you. So I was just saying, thank you all for attending today. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.